But if you want to use something millions of times a day to do something fairly narrow, which is what real things end up being when you look at scale in that sense, you actually want to use simpler models, smaller models that are more accurate for what you want to do. And that is really one of the philosophies, that we want to have small purpose-built models that do certain things, that do specific things really well. That's the second philosophy. The third thing that we think is that we want these models to be agentic. And I think that's the other thing is that, at least the first experience that most people have with generative AI is a chatbot. And we don't necessarily want to build a chatbot. We want to build something that helps people complete some task.
Hi, wherever you're joining us, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Tech Conversations, where we bring you insights from tech entrepreneurs, CXOs, and investors. I'm Hari Arakli, and in this episode, Dr. Vivek Raghavan catches us up on the story of Sarvam, the startup that he and Dr. Pratyush Kumar founded less than 2 years ago in Bengaluru. In this conversation, Vivek talks about their dream of building the full stack of AI for 1 billion Indians. He walks us through what Sarvam has already achieved in building Sarvam 2B, their open-sourced language model built with the aim of supporting Indian languages, and also their voice-based AI agents. And I also managed to get Vivek to talk just a little bit about his own entrepreneurial journey. All right. So Vivek, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate your time, sir. To get us started, you could also give us a snapshot of the path that brought you to Sarvam. I mean, UIDAI, and you've also been in the industry, and I think there was a startup earlier on as well that you...
Yeah, actually multiple startups.
Yes, so give us a snapshot of all of that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so maybe we'll start at the beginning. I got my BTech from IIT Delhi. I grew up in Delhi, and then after that I went and got my master's and PhD at Carnegie Mellon. And after that, I actually immediately started a company straight after finishing my PhD. Right. That was not the plan, but that's the way it worked. And for about 20 years, I was in this industry, which is called electronic design automation, which actually is software to build semiconductors. So so therefore, I was both startups as well as running significant organizations in large companies. So that's what I did for about 20 years. And then about 2007, I returned back to India. And
what got you thinking about coming back to India?
It was actually almost accident. I mean, my mother was not well, and so I was visiting India quite often. And then she actually passed away. And then I said, I need to do something different in life. And my company had just been acquired a couple of years before. So the only thing I could do was, I'd been in India enough. I said, maybe this is an interesting place. So let me say I'm going to move to India. So I just want to change something in my life. And I hadn't seriously thought about it before that. And
which was this company? What was it called?
It was that time it was called Magma Design Automation. Magma Design Automation. So therefore, and Magma had actually acquired my company.
Right.
So acquired my second company was acquired by Magma, and of course later Magma got bought by Synopsys.
Right.
And I used to work previously in Synopsys, so therefore it's all the same kind of industry. So therefore, so in 2007 I came back.
So that startup was into EDM?
Yes.
Your second startup?
Both my first and second startups were in electronic design automation.
What were they called?
So both were, they're small. They were small startups, but in the second startup was called Mojave. Okay, It was actually called Mojave. And we were actually...
Named it after a desert?
Yeah, not actually. There is a backstory to that, but I won't go into that. But in the end, So this company was actually building software to help actually design for manufacturability. So actually, used to spend significant time at TSMC. So it's a different. The things have come around a whole cycle. In fact, our first customer at Mojave was NVIDIA. So it's interesting.
Awesome. Yeah.
So that was, of course, a very different time. But then I came back to India in 2007, and till 2009, I was still with Magma. And then I said, I'm here in India, but I'm not doing anything different. So I said, okay, I need to kind of change something in my life. And after a few months, this Aadhaar project was starting up. And I decided to become a volunteer. And I thought maybe I'll do it for 6 months, but it was, almost 15 years in at Aadhaar. And actually, even today, I'm an advisor to UID. So that was that. So therefore, that really was something very different, and compared to what I had done before. And and at that time, and then I got into working on other things that today we call as digital public infrastructure. So therefore, one of the I've been advisor to help both GST and UPI to do various things. But I think one of the important things I got involved in was this whole the national language translation mission, which is called Bhashini. So therefore, and as part of Step, I actually was kind of helping to kind of drive that. And then I also got involved in with AI for Bharat. I was mentor for AI for Bharat, which actually was building a whole bunch of these Indian language AI and this is the pre-GPT era, right? In both data sets and models and so I actually got involved with them and helped get that funded and try to really build some of these things, as well as made sure that Bhashini had a bunch of models that they could use and things. So that was that. So, and as I said, I worked in a number of. So I thought that pretty much at that stage, even though I had been an entrepreneur before in my life, I thought that now I'm going to pretty much do either open source work or government work. That's probably what I thought was. But then I think life has its own ways of doing things. So therefore, ChatGPT happened, right? So, and I think the interesting thing that I realized fairly early is that I think this technology, and this is true, and I think we are still at the very beginning of this trend. I think this technology has the potential to fundamentally change things and way things are done, and make many things that were simply not possible before possible now, right? I mean, I think that that there is the possibility because of these technologies that every child can actually have a quality education, right? Or every person would have access to good healthcare. These are, I think we are still a few years out of it, but I think the potential of doing these kinds of things, and I saw that this is something, at least in my mind, I felt that this is something that is transformational in that sense. And then I said, hey. My first instinct was, let's try to say, hey, how can I contribute to this either kind of in the open source or helping government or those kinds of things. But I realized after a while that things are moving so fast here that you have to take a different view in there. And that's when I said, maybe the right way to do this to actually start something and I'd known Pratyush already for 3 or 4 years, and we'd worked quite a lot on AI for Bharat and stuff like that. And I said, hey.
How did you all first meet, you and Pratyush?
We and Pratyush, we first met during COVID, actually. And we used to talk every week And because were involved in these kind of open source kind of things.
Do you recall was there an event that brought you
No,
together?
it was not. It was not an event. It's actually a mutual friend.
Okay.
Manish Gupta, who was director of R&D at Google, he knew both of us, and so he brought Mitesh, Pratyush, and Mitesh, who heads AI for Bharat,
Right.
brought us all together, and then it was COVID, so we didn't meet anybody. So we actually used to talk every week on various things. Yeah. So therefore, yeah. So we met virtually 20, 30 times before we actually physically ever met. I think that was.
Were you all in Bangalore at that time?
No. I was in Bangalore and they were in Chennai.
Okay.
So therefore.
Okay.
So it was actually.
All right. Okay. I would imagine that the work on Aadhaar, etc., informs how you think about Sarvam as well. But can you just, for a general audience, give us a sense of what Sarvam is about?
Yeah. So I think, the idea about Sarvam is that if the mission statement is very clear, we want to build generative AI that 1 billion Indians can use. Right. That's and maybe that billion comes from Aadhaar. I don't know, but I think that the ambition to make a difference at a large scale. But at the same time, when you say that you want to do that, then the question comes is how do you do that, right? And there are a few things that I think are important for us to think about. First is that we want to build a full stack solution. And when we say about full stack solution, it means starting from, in certain cases, building foundational models and going all the way to how a common person would experience generative AI in a manner that's useful for them to do something in their lives, right? Otherwise, it needs to be useful, right? No technology makes sense, at least by itself. It makes sense because of the possibilities of what you can do with it, right? The second thing which is important is, clearly we'd already been working in Indian languages, and I think what became clearer to me is that voice is the modality by which we communicate in India, and we speak, obviously, colloquially in our own languages and a mixture of languages, and that's how we communicate. And I think that's the core, way that we speak in India. And I think that's the way that Gen AI needs to become accessible to that class of things, right? That's the second thing. The third thing, and I think that is that, while I think these models such as, OpenAI or Anthropic and stuff like that are wonderful, and they are getting better all the time, and there's no doubt in getting better all the time. But they are massive models, right? So they are massive models, and we believe that for what we, as a principle, if you're kind of going to use a model once a month, you're going to use a model once a week, or you're going to use a model for proof of concept, using the frontier models is the right thing to do, because you can actually use the front. But if you want to use something millions of times a day to do something fairly narrow, which is what real things end up being when you look at scale in that sense, you actually want to use simpler models, smaller models that are more accurate for what you want to do. And that is really one of the philosophies, that we want to have small purpose-built models that do certain things, that do specific things really well. That's the second philosophy. The third thing that we think is that we want these models to be agentic. And I think that's the other thing, is that, at least the first experience that most people have of generative AI is a chatbot. And we don't necessarily want to build a chatbot. We want to build something that helps people complete some task, right? Can I, do something like, can I book an appointment with a doctor? Can I, where there are real actions taking place. It's not like just a conversation, they're chatting and getting information, right? It really makes changes to systems of record and things like that. And I think that's where the value is, that you actually can achieve some task. And that's the other part, is agentic. And then, of course, the final, design principle is the principle of sovereign. And sovereign, I don't necessarily mean sovereign in a country sense, though you could think of it in that way also. But I even think at an enterprise sense, right? Supposing I want really to use my generative AI within my enterprise, and I wanted to, access all kinds of sensitive information that I have. Do I then want to actually call a frontier model which runs outside my control to do something like that? And I think that therefore we believe that if you have smaller models, you can achieve the concept of my data, my models, and my compute. So therefore, you're actually in control of what happens, and you can do most things that you want to be able to do. There are certain things where obviously these frontier models are the way to go as far as that is concerned. But I think this concept for most things that people want to do, and the interesting thing is the trends are that the models of the same size are getting better and better, and you can do all kinds of things with that.
So can you bring us to today? Sort of explain to a layperson what you have actually built at Sarvam today.
Okay. So we built, and it's not one thing, it's a few things that we have built. And the first thing that we built are agents, right? So therefore, we've built the product called Sarvam Agents. And this is something by which you can have a voice-led conversation with a, you can call it a bot, you can have, and to actually kind of make actions happen. And these agents are available can be used in 2 or 3 kind of channels that we say, that you could actually call a number and actually talk to an agent. Or you could do it in WhatsApp, which is again a very common way that Indians interact with places. In fact, even voice notes on WhatsApp India it's very big in. And then of course you can do this in 10 languages, right? And then you can also do it inside an app. So therefore, there's an app, then you can actually say, I want to talk to someone in the app, and then you can talk to someone in the app. So the point is that this is if you look at it, the first product that we are launching is this agents product, right? Where different experiences, where enterprises can build different experiences, where they have different intents of what they want to achieve, and they can achieve it through a natural conversation with an agent. Right? So that is the intent of what we want to be able to do here. And
so at one level, it could offer convenience, like you may want to just speak in your language and order something, or at the other end, it could even be life-saving, where if you're in for example, like a hospital-related app, you may be able to speak in your own language and ask for help, things like that. I mean, I'm just sort of hypothetically saying.
It can be anything, right? So therefore, in fact, many times when you are in an app, when you're about to do something, some transaction, and you have a doubt, maybe you could just talk to someone and understand, am I really doing the right thing or not, right? So therefore, that is an example in an experience in an app. Or, let's say that I have and this can be in any case. Let's say that I have launched a new product, and I want to really understand what people really think about it, right? Say I'm an FMCG company and I've launched a product and it's all. And I really want to go and talk to people and see what they really think about the product. Now that voice doesn't exist today. There is no way for anybody to actually get that feedback. And now this kind of solution can actually make this kind of thing possible. And you can understand full analytics of what happened and what do people like and what they're actually saying, right? And about whatever your product. And this can be anything. This is something that can operate on a nation scale, if you want, on any kind of thing, right? You want to get a feedback about something. Or the other kind of thing is, hey, it could be for something like customer support, where you're calling, there's a problem, you're able to access the database, you're able to give answers, you're able to actually understand. And so, or it could be even, hey, I got I am some e-commerce product, and here is, I have somebody has a cart, they haven't, they actually didn't check out the cart. Maybe you can call them and ask, and try to close the sale. So therefore, that's something that it's these are just examples of things that you could do with it. But it's the bottom line is that ability to talk to people and get things done is really good. So that's the agents product. And the other thing about the agents product is that we are pricing it at 1 rupee a minute, which is I think that that's something that we say that from a value perspective, this is something that is very different, and it works in 10 languages. So that's the first product that we have. The second product is we actually have many Indian language APIs, which we needed to build to actually put together this product. We're also providing them to various developers and other people to say, hey, you can build your own experiences using these components, right? So that is the other part. So therefore, very interesting speech APIs in Indian languages, colloquial translations, so translating where you translate it to English or you do other kinds of things, where translation is focused on the accessibility of the translation. That's really the focus. And also there are a whole bunch of text to speech in different languages and things like that. So those are the kinds of models that we are making available as part of our system. The third thing, and I think the other thing that which is what related to this whole sovereign concept is that while of course these things are available as a SaaS service that you can actually use from the web, we also can have this as kind of an appliance, right? In the sense that now it is fully under your control and you can actually run something locally within your thing. So that's an appliance kind of concept. That those are relevant to people who want to use at a very extremely large scale, and actually having something like this that allows them to do these things at scale. Among the other things that we have is we have one more thing, which is this, and this is we're having this law product, right? It's called A1. It is actually for lawyers, and it's a whole bunch of tools that make lawyers using generative AI to make lawyers' lives simpler. And what's unique about it is kind of based in Indian law. We basically get the latest information from whether it's from RBI or from SEBI or from the courts or from income tax tribunals or whatever, all those things are actually are available there. And then you can actually do research memos, you can study contracts, you can, kind of generate contracts, you can do redactions and extraction, all kinds of things that a lawyer would need to do. Many of these capabilities, building this legal workbench. And I think that this is, right now we build legal, maybe for other kinds of professionals also, we may have these classes of workbenches that allow them to do things better in what they want to do. So that's the other product that we have launched. And then we have two interesting models, which we have open source. One of the things that, we come from the open source community, and we think that building these things, we want to involve, the community as well to make things further. So we've open sourced a couple of models, and I think two of them are interesting. The first one is what's known as Sarvam 2B, which is a 2 billion parameter open source model, which has been trained on 4 trillion tokens. Mm-hmm. And this is by far, I would say, I think and probably a fairly large percent, I think 40% of all tokens are actually Indian language tokens in this training. So it's actually something which has extremely strong skills on Indian language kind of tasks. Like maybe I want to do summarization, or I want to do translation, or I want to do named entity recognition in Indian languages. It's actually much stronger than much bigger models to do this. So this is actually, again, something that we use it to build our own solutions, but other people can also use it to do things, because it's even you compared to even like a Llama, which is has an 8 million model. This is like 4 times smaller than that. And also, it's much more efficient in representation of Indian language data, right? So, I mean, people use the word tokenizer. The tokenizers actually are basically conversion of words into a concept with tokens, which is actually the inputs taken by a large language model. And now a tokenizer, this is extremely efficient in tokenization of Indian languages, maybe 3 times more efficient than anything else, which is 2 to 3 times. So therefore, when you look at a smaller model with more efficient tokenizer for Indian tasks, right? Indian tasks, we expect it to be like an order of magnitude better than anything else that is there.
This is text-based.
This is a text model. This is a pure text model, text in, text out, and it's a text model, and we've open sourced that model. And we've also, and the other thing that we've also done is we've also open sourced what we call as an audio LM, right? Which is actually this is actually an audio front end built on top of Llama, okay? So, but it's interesting. That's called Shuka. And the thing about Shuka is that it is not, normally if you said, if I actually want to pass something to a text LLM, I may do first, I may do speech recognition, and then I may do translation, and then I pass that on to the LLM. But here, what we've done is we've actually taken these audio tokens and directly passed it to Llama. So therefore, it's that makes it significantly faster. And it's the first time people have attempted to do something like this in Indian languages. And we're also open sourcing it so that people can now look at that whole thing and how to actually efficiently graft audio models onto existing text models. So therefore, you've taken a text model and it has now become an audio model. So.
And you also released something called OpenHati.
OpenHati was our first open source thing, which we had released about 7-8 months ago. And that was actually, it's interesting. So if you want to compare OpenHati with, say, Sarvam 2V, which is both of them a text model, probably easier to compare. OpenHati was actually, we took an open source model, which was like Llama, and we actually modified its tokenizer to make it more efficient on Indian things. And then we continued training with wherever it was. Llama had been trained with a large number of tokens. And then at that stage, we actually had only probably 50 billion tokens in Indian language. So therefore, we said we can't train something from scratch that's too small a number of tokens. So we actually said let's continually pre-train from there. And then we said, okay, now we have something that is continually pre-trained, and now it can get language skills because of the continual pre-training, right? You could just do fine-tuning and give it language skills also, but then the cost of that is very expensive. Here we said, okay, we'll continually pre-train. And what Sarvam 2B is different is we've actually trained from scratch, that's the difference between OpenHati and this. And the reason we did is now we actually have trillions of tokens in Indian languages, which did not exist at that time.
In the context of OpenAI and ChatGPT, those who have taken an interest in knowing a bit more about it understand that GPT-4 or whatever today is the LLM.
Yeah.
In the Sarvam context, what would you say is your sort of flagship LLM if you built one?
So, if you look at the one that we are open sourcing is Sarvam 2B, right? That is our LLM, so to say. But if you look at our actual agentic systems, it's actually a combination of many models where LLM is only part. In fact, multiple LLMs inside there itself to actually make these systems work.
And you've built all those LLMs, you've borrowed from existing ones?
So some of them we have built from scratch. Some of them we leverage open source LLMs and things like that. So we are not dogmatic about that everything needs. But we think that where there is value to build something from scratch, that is something that others won't do because it is related to specifically things that we want to bring these things out and be part of the ecosystem to help move these things forward in India.
What have been some really tough challenges trying to build, like a deep tech AI company that Sarvam is today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if you look at it, one of the things that happened, and even before that in AI for Bharat, we were actually collecting Indic data, at least open source Indic data, which was there, and we probably had the largest collection of open source Indic data. And when we realized that this kind of data is important, we started collecting it, and we basically came up with 50, 100 billion tokens. And we thought when we started, this may be enough, we can actually do things with it. But then we realized that you really need much more data, and it doesn't exist, right? Of course, there are ways by which, so then what we found out is the interesting way that we actually found was the most effective way to actually increase the amount of data was to actually leverage models to generate data. So in fact, a lot of our data is actually synthetic data in Indian languages, which actually we generated using other models that we don't, I mean, internal models that we. That's actually been very effective for us to build some of these things. And I think this is something that people don't talk about as much, but I think that in various domains, how people are cleverly able to generate high quality, which is also important, high quality, because you can generate synthetic data, may not be of good quality, it's not very useful. High quality synthetic data is actually going to be one of the important things in moving forward of using AI for your use case and things like that. How do you actually generate that class of high quality data?
Can you explain in simple terms the significance of a token? I mean, my very rudimentary understanding is the model, it kind of breaks down a word into X number of tokens, and then it.
Yeah, so I think, so let me say it this way. So just maybe give you 2 or 3 examples to try and clarify what that might be. So firstly, you may say you have let's say you have a text model, right? A text model takes a word, and then maybe it breaks it up into tokens, right? Normally, if you look at most English tokenizers, if I have, say, 50 words, that may correspond to 70 tokens. So about 20, 30% more than the number of words is the number of tokens that you end up happening. Now, what ends up happening is that, the total number of tokens in a model is a fixed amount, right? So therefore, if I have data that's there much more, like for example, English data dominates, right? Then you are actually in English, you're much closer to one word becoming one token. But if you are in some other, and I think like if you are in some other language, like take an example, like say Odia, where you may literally in many cases, every character was becoming a token. Okay, so the same thing to express in the same thing to express in Odia was, 5 times to 8 times more expensive than to express a certain thing in in English. Now, of course, you can solve that by and the reason why you have fewer tokens in certain languages than in other languages is because obviously there's much more data in English, and I want to represent all my data efficiently. So if I just take a global view, clearly, if you look at, say, something like a Common Crawl, less than 0.1% of the data is in Hindi, let alone any other language in India. So then what ends up happening is that correspondingly, the token real estate given to Indian language data becomes much less. So therefore, but if you say, I'm going to take a different view on how this, therefore I need to have significant token real estate for Indian words and Indian characters, then you become much more efficient at representing those things in what you want to do. Or take even an example of Shuka, where what happened? The token is not a word at all. The token is a piece of audio, right? And so therefore now you're actually going from audio to understanding, right? So therefore, it's how you take something from what somebody a human says, maybe by either speaking or by typing or something like that, to what the LLM actually uses. That transformation is really the token.
So in the Indian context, where has the original data come from?
So there are a lot of things that are there. But there's clearly a lot of open documents that exist, right? So that is the most important source of documents that are there, at least they're among open, right? There are other things which clearly the interesting thing, right? Even things like YouTube videos or whatever. There are a whole bunch of different things where people have. And actually in India, it's interesting. More data is available in in there are obviously newspapers and things like that. But when you have those kinds of things, some of them ends up being translationese, right? So therefore, I maybe it's not even a human who did it. And so the important thing is diversity of data. And that's something that, in fact, one of the things that we were working on in AI for Bharat, AI for Bharat continues to do, is to actually collect audio data from every district in the country. Okay, talking of this, and actually, Google has also has an interesting project called Project Vani, where again they're again trying to collect variations in every place, and they actually show a picture, and then people try to, and you ask to describe it in your own words, whatever language you may be speaking.
I was just trying to wrap my head around
Yeah.
the enormity of challenge of collecting Indic language data. So I'm just trying to figure out whether there are existing efforts on which you could rely.
So there are no. So it's interesting. So there, as I said, that we certainly need to do more, right? But some of these are also, there is like this. The Bhashini project has been doing things with AI for Bharat has been doing some things. As I said, both the Gates Foundation as well as Google have been doing. Again, they're open sourcing and making these data available for people to do things, right? So there are those things, and then there are companies where people are working to actually collect data like Karya, etc., where people are actually paid to collect data, read out and do various language tasks and stuff like that. So there are all of these efforts, and then on top of that, I think that you have to leverage synthetic creation. I mean, would it be great if we had more data? Yes, it does, but it's also important that it's not the volume of the data, it's the quality of data that matters also. What is the information content in data is something that is, we're realizing the diversity and quality is what is, especially if you start saying, I want to go to a domain, then how do I actually get the essence, right, of what something is there? So, and I think these are certainly topics of research and topics where I think that people will come up with better ways of kind of getting the right data, right, in some sense. Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about the commercial side of things now? How do you envision Sarvam offering its technologies to customers?
So even, I mean, as I said, that we are offering these agents, and that's going to be our first kind of go-to-market kind of thing, where we are going to have that, and our APIs that people can use, and those are two of the from a monetization perspective. And of course, there is the enterprise customers where you're actually having this appliance and stuff like that, where people can use things. So I think these are two or three of strategies that are there that we are going to use to actually kind of generate revenue for Sarvam, and I think that I feel optimistic that this will happen. But I think in the end we have to show value to customers and see from there. Yes, yeah.
Where would you place yourself on sort of the curve of commercialization? Where are you at today?
So I think, we have rolled out our products. We are talking to a number of people, and there is a lot of interest. But I think that we're still very early, on that process.
Do you have any early findings in terms of what, especially on the enterprise side, what your potential customers are looking to use Sarvam's technologies for?
There's all kinds of things. As I said, there are the very obvious things, right? Which is basically things like customer support and surveys and upselling and those kinds of things. And those are fairly horizontal and training their sales force and doing those kind of things. Those seem to be fairly kind of common use cases. And then there are, if you look at the way law and things, the law product and things like that, it's like, how do I make my employees more efficient at what they do, right? So to be able to kind of build those kinds of things for them. So I think that's a kind of things that we're looking at. There is a lot of interest, and I'm optimistic that these things will grow in there. But time will tell. Yes.
If I can circle back to your point that you want to build a full stack company, can you break that down for us? What are the sort of layers of this stack? And
so, see, I think at the lowest level is you're building foundational models. And I think that we have made a start. We've obviously built some foundational models, but we think that, again, that's an ongoing area. It's research, so many new things happening all the time that will continuously evolve, right? How we do things will evolve and get better over time. So that's the lowest layer, is that foundation. And we will build foundation models for where we can bring differentiated value. It's not like we're not building it for the sake of building it, but where we are. The second layer is basically this whole, what we call as the fabric, where you're actually running a number of models together to actually create user experiences, right? So therefore, that's another enterprise grade fabric that we are building on top of that, right? That's the next one. And then the third layer is actually the authoring layer, where people can kind of author their own experiences and build their own applications using the components that we provide, right? So that's where, and when you do that, hey, I can build something which can be deployed on WhatsApp. I can build something that can be deployed on the phone. I can build something that's really kind of the authoring layer, where people literally in a kind of a no-code manner can actually build their own experiences that they can work with Sarvam. So, and then of course those are the core things. There are different ways. Like sometimes if people are very big companies, we may have appliance and other things there, but that's the essence of it.
To build out these additional layers of your stack, I mean, what is sort of the timetable that you're looking at?
No. So I think we have a first version of all the layers of the stack, right? That's there today. But I think as we go and we engage with more people and new things keep coming, we'll have to keep building on each layer, right? I think that's the way of looking at it, right? I think each layer you'll have to build more things, and it's an ongoing process. It's not like something will magically happen and everything stops there. I think this is a very dynamic area. I mean, look at the kind of changes that have happened even in the last 18 months in the world. You have to kind of continually improve, right? I don't think there's any other way. Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a sense of, if you throw the story forward 3 to 5 years, what is the kind of company you think Sarvam will be?
See, I think it's the kind of company I want Sarvam to be is, I want it to be a company which is impacting people at a large scale, right? And many, many people are touching the technology of Sarvam, and it is actually able to help, and they're doing it because they get value from it, right? That's it's very clear. My motivation in actually starting Sarvam is to actually have something that people can use at a large scale, right? So that's and our intent is to be directly or indirectly be in places that people can actually use this technology at large scale.
Can you talk a bit about the ecosystem in India that can support companies like Sarvam, whether it is in terms of money, VC ecosystem, government support in terms of encouraging regulations, and of course the talent side of the ecosystem and any other aspects that you want to talk about? What does it look like to you today?
No, I'm quite optimistic about the ecosystem as such. I mean, I think that I mean, when you talk about funding, you can always have more funding. We're not that's not but I think that there are many useful things that can be done with the funding that we have. In terms of talent, I think that you have to build some of this talent yourself, but fundamentally, we have people. I mean, if you look at it globally, the people who are building things of this nature, I mean, I think there are people who've been trained in India and are doing that, right? So therefore, it is, of course, sometimes when you look at this, if people haven't done these kinds of things at scale, then there is the experience issue. But I think that the talent can be trained, and I am actually quite optimistic about it. I also think that, like, while it's the compute and GPUs and things like that are beginning to be available, I don't foresee that as the bottleneck in our ability to. When we just trained a model in India, Sarvam 2B was trained in a data center in India, right? So therefore, these things can be, and I think if you look at all the plans that various people have, I don't think that hardware availability is going to be the bottleneck. The thing that is going to be the challenge is what are the use cases that are useful to people. And I think that if you crack that well, then I think all the other things will fall in place. And therefore, and we have to think use cases at scale, not something that, hey, that's one of the things in Gen AI is actually very easy to do a POC. It's much harder to actually move these things to production at scale. And I think that we have to identify what are those value creating applications, use cases that people want at scale and be able to deliver those things.
And do you think that you'll be able to identify use cases where people will be able to sort of, willing to pay for it, because there's a lot of
that
value?
that is always the challenge, that whether people are willing to pay for it or not. But I believe that if you're generating the value for them, they will pay. In India, if you're giving value, people will pay. So I think that you should not think about whether people will pay. Then the question you should be asking is, are you generating value?
I mean, for example, in the case of UPI, right now it's not clear if private profit-seeking companies are able to directly make money on UPI. You can't, right? And there's no such thing.
Yeah, there's no such
card
thing.
charge and things like that.
Yes.
And I have, in doing some homework for this conversation, I have listened to you talk about who pays for the token or the tokenizer.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the place that I'm coming from. What have you all thought about in terms of how to make these things pay for themselves in the Indian context?
Yeah, I think, see, if you look at there are obviously certain things, right? And these are the kinds of calls. And I'm not suggesting that AI should be that way at all, or maybe not. I don't have a view on that. But if you look at something like UPI, what did they do? They actually took a certain layer and they say that layer is public infrastructure. Means it runs like a utility, right? The pricing, to the extent that anybody understands the price, it's actually a cost plus pricing, right? You charge how much it costs you to run that infrastructure, and maybe that's. But while you have a layer above that where people are going to say, I'm going to innovate, right? And those places you can have value pricing, right? And so therefore, I think that's the question, whether any particular technology and the fact that that in UPI, that none of those fees were there, actually is what made it, as big a system as it is, right? And so therefore, that's a question. I mean, and here I'm not answering from a Sarvam perspective necessarily, but I'm saying that you have, as a society, we need to understand what parts are infrastructure, right? Where it is, where the goal is that, it should be maintained as a public infrastructure, which should be interoperable and things like that, right? So therefore, and in the question of AI at this stage, I believe AI is on the innovation side of things. So therefore, but maybe those things change too, right? So
what should India's AI strategy be?
so for example, let us just say that, let us say that there is and here we are just imagining, I'm not saying there is actually anything, but let's say there is a public good kind of a use case that is there, right? I think that kind of case, I mean, obviously you need to, and who pays is a different question, but you need to pay for it at least at the cost at which it is taking to actually run that stuff. Maybe there is a certain other cost to build the model which is different, but let's just say that on a per transaction, and using that word very loosely, you need to be able to meet your costs, right? But beyond that, maybe that's beyond that, it should be that it should not be significantly more than that when you're talking about something that is at a nation scale kind of thing, right? But if you're thinking about something that is adding value to a given enterprise, that is priced based on how much value you get from it, right? And so therefore, both kinds of use cases may exist in the future.
And are you seeing other ventures coming up, other startups coming up, where you see people are doing really good work, fundamental work in India?
No. So I think one of the things that you have to remember is there are, I think, a bunch of startups which are working a little bit more on the application level. But by the way, that is also very good work. I don't want to kind of just because you're doing something more fundamental doesn't mean you're better. It's what value you add. If they are creating good value doing that, that's good. And I think that should happen, right? So there are definitely many companies which are doing quite well at the application layer. There'll be companies will do well in the domain layer by deeply understanding the domain, and they may be verticalized, going all the way to the bottom to do things. And I think all of these things will be there, right? The question is, hey, if you want to, will there be a frontier model company from India doing something, building at that scale? I think that's something that, we'll have to see, right?
What's your view on the hardware side of things? I mean, you spent decades in EDM, you're in Synopsys, Magma, your own startup. Today, we have a fledgling effort to build risk-based systems on chip. So should India be spending money designing chips that can support AI, or what else should we be doing?
No, I think just because the road is long doesn't mean don't do it, right? So therefore, I think people should make those efforts, but you have to remember that it is a long road to do something like that.
And very expensive.
Yeah, so a very long road and a very expensive road. And so you have to catch at each level, right? And you have to figure out what is the right way. But sometimes when there is a change in the way things are done, there are opportunities for new players to come in, right? So if you believe the computing paradigm is changing, right, then somebody who starts from scratch and thinks can actually come up with a good idea. But having said that, these kinds of things, maybe there is some team in a garage doing something which will do something amazing, but you can't. I don't know whether it's a. I think if you really want to make something big change, you have to think like that. But I think as a country, we should keep building and getting deeper and deeper into these things, and there's no doubt about it. Yeah. But it is expensive. It's a very expensive game.
So in this backdrop, we were to bring it back to Sarvam over the next, say, couple of years, what might be your top priorities?
Yeah, our top priorities will be actually delivering use cases of generative AI at scale, which help people get things done. Whether it is through the enterprise or whether it's through some other kinds of means, that's actually what we want. We want to be able to make sure that our agents and our systems are being used very widely. I think that's success for us.
I want to ask a few questions about your own entrepreneurial journey. What got you thinking about wanting to be an entrepreneur? I mean, after your PhD?
Actually, that's I mean, I would say that I think both times I've been somewhat of an accidental entrepreneur, right? So in the sense that as I said, I was doing a PhD. Both my parents had PhDs. Okay, so my mother was actually India's first astrophysicist, and a woman astrophysicist, and
What's her name?
her name is Nirupama Raghavan. She passed away many years ago, but
Any particular area of astrophysics that she focused on?
she was actually a solar astrophysicist. Okay, she was a solar astrophysicist, and and so therefore I was very much. And my father's a professor at IIT and material science and things like that. So therefore I thought that I would
IIT
be
Madras, is it?
IIT Delhi, IIT Delhi,
Ah.
IIT Delhi. So yeah, then I also thought that I would be an academic or something like that. But we just some of us friends from graduate school, we decided to just take whatever we had done in our PhDs and actually start a company with it. And so therefore, yeah, it's completely that was not the plan until it happened. And that was a very different time. In 1992, that's a long time ago, and it wasn't
Right.
like startups was the thing to do.
Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, so it is. It just sounded like an interesting thing to do. We didn't know much about it, and we were always. And I think that's one of the things which is there is that I've always been somebody who wants to take technology risks. Not hey, let's do things a different way than it's been done right now, and if you actually do that, then you have an advantage because of the way you've done things, right? And that's yeah. So I just happened to happen that way, and literally, after that, as I said, that company got acquired, became many times, and I was running an extremely large organization. Then I said, okay, let me start something once again, and then had another startup, and so therefore, that's how it worked. So therefore,
Any last points you want to leave us with?
no, I mean, I think it's really exciting to be doing this, and it's exciting to be doing this after having spent 15 years thinking about digital public infrastructure and thinking bigger, right? And I think that's something that that's what I learned really in doing all of those things, and I think that this is an experiment, right, to see how a deep tech company can be successful in India, and I'm very excited about the future, but we'll see how it goes.